The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the narrow roads of Quezon City. A dense canopy of Balete trees, their twisted trunks and sprawling roots entwined like ancient sentinels, loomed on either side of Balete Drive. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the lingering hint of jasmine, mingling with the faint sound of cicadas that heralded the onset of twilight. A light mist began to rise from the ground, cloaking the path in an ethereal veil as the last rays of sunlight faded into dusk. In the early 1900s, this stretch of road was little more than a dirt path, used primarily by farmers and traders who traversed it on foot or atop weary horses. The Balete trees, revered in local folklore for their mystical qualities, stood as both a sanctuary and a source of superstition. Whispers of the supernatural danced on the lips of townsfolk. Tales of spirits that roamed the night, their presence felt but rarely seen. It was said that the Balete trees were not merely trees, but gateways to another realm, and those who ventured too close would sometimes return with tales of encounters that chilled the bone. On a particularly humid evening in 1905, a group of young men from nearby barrios gathered at the edge of Balete Drive. Their laughter echoed through the gathering gloom, a sharp contrast to the somber aura that cloaked the trees. They were determined to confront the legends that had kept them awake at night, daring one another to venture deeper into the thicket where the shadows grew thickest. As the bravado swelled with the rising moon, they marked a pact, vowing to walk the length of the drive and return unscathed, a test of courage that would etch their names into the stories of their village. With lanterns flickering in their hands, the group pressed forward. The light danced erratically, illuminating the gnarled branches overhead, which seemed to reach down as if to ensnare the intruders. Each step deeper into the drive sent a shiver through the air, a sudden chill that wrapped around them like an unwelcome embrace. The laughter subsided, replaced by an uneasy silence, punctuated only by the rustle of leaves and the distant croak of frogs. As they reached the heart of the drive, a figure appeared in the periphery of their lantern light. A woman, ethereal and radiant, stood amongst the trees. Her long, flowing garments were woven with patterns that shimmered in the dim glow, and her hair cascaded like a waterfall of night. The boys halted, their bravado faltering as they beheld the apparition. The stories had spoken of a spirit, a white lady who wandered these woods, and here she was, real and haunting. "Turn back," she whispered, her voice echoing like a distant breeze through the branches. "This place is not for the living." Fear gripped their hearts, and the faint flicker of their lanterns trembled. One by one, they turned to flee, the laughter from earlier now replaced by gasps and shouts as they stumbled over roots and rocks, driven by terror. The woods seemed to close in around them, the Balete trees standing as silent witnesses to their folly. When morning light finally broke, the remnants of the night's escapade punctuated the earth, footprints leading to the entrance of Balete Drive, but none returning. The villagers would speak of the boys, their names whispered in reverence and fear, adding another layer to the tapestry of legends that encircled the Balete trees. Balete Drive, once merely a path through the countryside, would forever be etched in memory as a place where the veil between the living and the departed thinned, a reminder of the consequences that lay in challenging the unknown. The sun dipped low in the horizon, casting a golden glow over the newly laid Balete Drive in Quezon City. It was the 1950s, a time when the Philippines was still emerging from the shadows of war, and the promise of progress whispered through the leaves of the towering Balete trees that lined the road. Their gnarled branches swayed gently in the cool evening breeze, creating a canopy that veiled the thoroughfare in an enigmatic embrace. As construction crews completed the finishing touches, the asphalt glistened like a ribbon unfurling across the verdant landscape. Local residents, keen to witness the birth of this new artery, gathered at the fringes, their voices a soft murmur resonating with both excitement and apprehension. They spoke of the ancient trees, revered by their ancestors, believed to be the abodes of spirits, guardians of the land that had stood long before any road was carved through their domain. Among the onlookers was a young man named Miguel, a local boy with a penchant for adventure. He watched as the workers packed their tools, their laughter echoing down the newly paved stretch. The road would soon become a favored route for travelers heading to the bustling heart of Quezon City. But Miguel sensed something different in the air that day, a weight that settled uncomfortably on his chest. As dusk approached, the shadows deepened, and with them, the whispers of the past began to stir. The night fell over Balete Drive like a heavy shroud, and the first car glided down the road, its headlights slicing through the darkness. Inside, a group of friends laughed and shouted, oblivious to the legends that clung to the trees. They had heard tales of strange occurrences, of eerie figures darting between the trunks, of disembodied voices carried on the wind, but such stories were dismissed as mere folklore, fabrications spun by the superstitious. Yet as the vehicle sped along, the laughter grew uncertain. The driver, a young man named Carlos, suddenly slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a halt, tires screeching against the asphalt. The headlights illuminated the road ahead, revealing a figure standing motionless in the center of the lane. A woman in a flowing white dress, her long hair cascading like a waterfall of darkness. Panic surged through the cabin like wildfire. Carlos's heart raced as he muttered a prayer, his hands gripping the steering wheel. "What is that?" one of his friends gasped, eyes wide with terror. The figure remained silent, immobile, the fabric of her dress fluttering as if caught in an unseen breeze. The air grew thick, heavy with an unearthly chill, as if the trees themselves held their breath, watching the scene unfold. With a trembling hand, Carlos shifted the gear into reverse, and the car lurched backward. The figure, still unyielding, began to drift closer with an ethereal grace, her eyes hollow and haunting. The friends screamed, urging Carlos to flee, but the young man was entranced by the specter's sorrowful visage. In that moment, the legend of Balete Drive began to weave itself into the fabric of the city's history, a tale of beauty intertwined with the supernatural. The road, silent and serene by day, would soon become a passage of dread and intrigue, forever marked by the spectral presence that haunted its shadows. As the car sped away, the Balete trees whispered secrets of the past, their branches trembling with the weight of what was to come. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the verdant hillsides of Batangas as the afternoon winds whispered through the coconut palms. The air was thick with the scent of salt from the nearby sea and the rich aroma of roasted coffee wafting from the small village nestled at the foot of Mount Batulao. It was the summer of 1940, a time when the world was engulfed in conflict. Yet life in the Philippines seemed to meander along its peaceful course, unaware of the storm brewing beyond the horizon. The village was alive with the sounds of laughter and chatter, families preparing for the annual fiesta. Children darted between stalls laden with colorful goods, their faces painted with excitement, while elders exchanged stories of the past under the shade of the towering mango trees. But within this idyllic scene, an undercurrent of tension rippled. Rumors of war had reached even the most remote corners of the archipelago, and the villagers spoke in hushed tones about the shadows of impending strife. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the town square, a group of young men gathered near the docks, their spirits buoyed by the promise of adventure. They were fishermen, accustomed to braving the unpredictable seas, but tonight they were drawn to a different excitement. Word had spread that a ship from Manila, the MV Don Carlos, was to arrive with a cargo of much-anticipated supplies and a few curious travelers. The men, fueled by youthful bravado, decided to venture out to greet the vessel, their laughter echoing against the emerald hills. The sea, however, bore a different temperament. As the group boarded a small banca, the gentle waves that had cradled them moments before began to churn ominously. The sky darkened as clouds gathered, swirling like a tempest's harbinger. Undeterred, the young men pressed on, their laughter mingling with the sharp tang of salt water as they cut through the waves, eager to witness the ship's arrival. Minutes turned to hours, and the storm unleashed its fury. Rain lashed against the banca, and winds howled like a wounded beast, transforming the once calm sea into a churning cauldron. The young men, now gripped by fear, fought against the relentless tide, their hands raw against the wooden frame of their vessel. The MV Don Carlos loomed in the distance, a ghostly silhouette against the roiling backdrop of darkening skies. In an instant, disaster struck. A colossal wave, towering and merciless, surged toward them. The banca was tossed as if it were a mere toy, capsizing under the weight of the ocean's wrath. The men were thrown into the churning waters, cries of terror swallowed by the storm. Desperation clawed at their throats as they struggled against the tide, the bitter taste of salt mingling with the heavy burden of panic. As night fell, the storm subsided, leaving behind an eerie calm. The sea, once a raging tempest, now appeared deceptively serene, as if it had never unleashed its fury. The village, oblivious to the tragedy unfolding just beyond the horizon, continued its preparations for the fiesta. Yet, in the depths of the ocean, the weight of loss settled like a shroud, leaving behind only the echo of laughter, now silenced forever. The news of the tragic accident would ripple through the community, a tale told and retold, a somber reminder of the sea's unpredictable nature. In the years to come, the villagers would gather under the same mango trees, sharing stories of the brave souls lost to the depths, their laughter forever mingled with the salty breeze. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden hue over Balete Drive, a narrow stretch of asphalt flanked by towering acacia trees. As twilight descended, the air thickened with the scent of damp earth, and the distant hum of cicadas began to rise, a prelude to the night. It was on this fateful evening that the life of Maria Santos, a young woman of striking beauty, would come to a sudden and tragic end. Maria, dressed in a delicate white dress adorned with lace, was the epitome of elegance. Her long, dark hair cascaded in soft waves down her back, capturing the last rays of sunlight. She had ventured out that evening, intent on visiting a friend who lived just across the street, her heart light with the innocent anticipation of youthful camaraderie. The gentle rustle of her dress accompanied her as she approached the edge of the road, casting an occasional glance at the oncoming traffic. The evening traffic along Balete Drive was typically sparse, but tonight, a heavy, ominous cloud hung over the area, and the few vehicles that traversed the road seemed to speed past with reckless abandon, their headlights piercing the growing darkness. Maria hesitated, her heart racing, not just from the thrill of the night, but from an unshakable feeling of foreboding that settled in her chest like a stone. Yet, the desire to reunite with friends outweighed her apprehensions. With a determined breath, she stepped off the curb, her foot barely touching the asphalt, when the unmistakable roar of an engine shattered the stillness. A truck, its headlights glaring like the eyes of a beast, bore down on her with terrifying speed. Time slowed, the world around her faded, as the rumble of the engine drowned out the cicada's song. In that instant, the air crackled with tension, the universe holding its breath for what would come next. The driver, a local man returning from a long day at the market, saw her too late. Panic gripped him as he slammed the brakes, the tires screeching in protest. But it was futile. In a heartbeat, the world erupted into chaos. A sickening thud echoed through the night, and Maria was thrown into the air, her body twisting like a fallen leaf caught in a tempest. She landed with a heavy thump on the unforgiving pavement. Her form crumpled and still. As the truck came to an abrupt halt, the driver leapt out, eyes wide with horror. He rushed to her side, but the damage was done. Maria lay lifeless, the vibrant spirit that once danced through her veins extinguished in an instant. The street, once a mere passage, transformed into a site of tragedy, and the chill of death swept through the air. Word of the incident spread quickly through the nearby neighborhoods, igniting whispers and igniting imaginations. Some claimed to have seen her luminous form wandering Balete Drive in the nights that followed, her white dress shimmering ethereally in the moonlight, a ghostly figure forever lost. Others spoke of the eerie silence that fell over the road, of the unexplainable chill that enveloped the area when the sun set, as if the very trees mourned the loss of the young woman who had graced their shadows. In the days and weeks that followed, locals began to avoid the road after dark, sharing tales of the beautiful spirit that lingered, caught between the worlds of the living and the dead. Balete Drive became a place of both reverence and fear, a somber reminder of a fleeting life taken too soon, and the whispers of Maria Santos' spirit haunted the hearts of those who dared to tread her path. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden hue over the lush greenery of the Philippine archipelago. The year was 1955, and the air was heavy with the sense of damp earth and sea salt, mingling with the fading warmth of the day. In a small fishing village, nestled between the towering cliffs of Palawan, whispers of something extraordinary began to ripple through the community, like the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. Thomas, a seasoned fisherman with weathered hands and a heart full of tales, stood at the edge of the dock, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. His boat, a modest bankas carved from sturdy wood, bobbed lightly in the water. The village was quiet, save for the occasional caw of a seabird or the distant laughter of children playing in the sand. Yet an uneasy tension hung in the air, as if the very land anticipated the arrival of something monumental. As dusk descended, a flicker of light appeared over the waters. At first, it was merely a glimmer, a reflection of the dying sun shimmering on the surface. But as Thomas squinted into the growing twilight, the light transformed, shifting into a luminous orb that hovered just above the waves. The villagers, drawn by the peculiar sight, gathered behind him, their faces reflecting a mix of awe and apprehension. "Is that a boat?" whispered Maria, a young woman with wide, curious eyes. Her hand instinctively grasped the arm of her elder brother, Pedro, who shook his head, his brow furrowed. "I've never seen anything like it." The orb pulsated with a brilliant glow, illuminating the darkening sea, casting long shadows across the wooden dock and sending ripples of uncertainty among the onlookers. A murmur of speculation spread through the crowd. Was it a spirit of the sea, a messenger from the gods, or something far more sinister? Thomas, feeling a surge of both fear and fascination, stepped closer to the water's edge, his heart racing with a mixture of dread and excitement. Suddenly, the orb shot upward, soaring into the sky with a blinding flash before vanishing into the night. Gasps filled the air, the villagers stepping back, as if the very ground beneath them trembled. Silence enveloped them, broken only by the soft lapping of waves against the boat. "What do we do?" Pedro finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. A chill ran through the crowd as they exchanged glances, uncertainty tightening its grip on their hearts. Old tales of the Aswang, the mythical creatures that preyed upon the living, flooded their minds, tales that had been passed down through generations. Were they witnessing a sign, a harbinger of doom? As the darkness deepened, a feeling of foreboding settled over the village. Rumors of the sighting spread like wildfire, weaving through the fabric of their lives. In the following days, fishermen reported strange occurrences, nets returning empty, storms brewing without warning, and shadows flitting just beyond the reach of light. The once bustling docks fell quiet, and the laughter of children faded into the background. Fear gripped the hearts of the villagers, and the days turned into weeks. The orb was soon forgotten in hushed conversations, buried beneath layers of unease. But in the minds of those who witnessed it, a sense of dread lingered, and the legend of the first sightings began to take root, marking the beginning of something vast and unknown, a story that would echo through the years, woven into the very soul of the Philippines. As dusk descended upon Balete Drive in the 1970s, the air thickened with an unsettling silence, interrupted only by the rustle of leaves swaying to the soft whisper of the evening breeze. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting elongated shadows that danced ominously on the asphalt. The road, known for its winding path through dense groves of Balete trees, had always carried an aura of mystery. But as reports of a spectral figure began to surface, the atmosphere turned electric with trepidation. It was a Tuesday evening when the first driver recounted the chilling encounter. A lone jeepney, its headlights cutting through the encroaching darkness, rolled down the narrow lane. As the driver navigated the serpentine road, a glimmer of white caught his eye. He slowed, squinting into the gloom. There, standing at the side of the road, was a woman clad in a flowing white dress, her hair cascading like dark water over her shoulders. Her eyes, luminous against the twilight, bore an expression of longing, or perhaps sorrow. "Hitching a ride, ma'am," he called out, though a shiver ran down his spine. The woman did not respond, merely gazing at him with an ethereal stillness. Compelled by an unseen force, he pulled over, the engine's sputter mingling with the chirping of crickets. As the door creaked open, a cold gust swept through the jeepney, wrapping around him like an icy shroud. But when he turned, the woman had vanished, leaving only a lingering chill in the air and a pounding heart in his chest. Word spread quickly through the small towns that bordered Balete Drive. The story morphed with each retelling, a tapestry woven of fear and intrigue. Local taverns buzzed with hushed conversations as men and women gathered over glasses of tuba, recounting their own brushes with the spectral figure. Some claimed to have seen her drifting silently in the moonlit fog, while others spoke of her sudden appearances directly in the path of their vehicles, forcing them to swerve to avoid collision. The tales reached the ears of the barangay captain, Pedro Santos, a man of practical disposition who dismissed such stories as mere superstition. Yet, as reports continued to flood in, his skepticism began to wane. One fateful night, Pedro decided to confront this specter himself. Armed with a flashlight and a heavy heart, he drove his old car down Balete Drive, his grip on the steering wheel tightening with every mile. As he approached the infamous stretch, the shadows grew dense and the air turned thick with an electric charge. Suddenly, there she was, the woman in white, her form shimmering like a mirage under the pale glow of his headlights. Pedro's breath caught in his throat, and instinctively he slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched, sending a spray of gravel flying, but the apparition remained unmoved, staring into his soul with a gaze that seemed to pierce through the veil of life and death. A moment stretched into eternity as Pedro wrestled with disbelief and dread. In an instant, she vanished, leaving only the sound of his racing heart and the echo of a distant wail that faded into the night. The village would never be the same. The tales of the woman in white transformed into a legend, instilling fear in the hearts of many and a newfound caution among drivers navigating the treacherous curves of Balete Drive. The spectral figure became a part of their lives, a reminder that some mysteries are best left unsolved, lurking just beyond the realm of the living. In the humid summer of 1960, the air in the Philippines was thick with the scent of tropical flora and the palpable tension of an emerging national identity. The streets of Manila pulsed with energy as vibrant as the colors of the jeepneys that rumbled through the city, their metal frames adorned with hand-painted motifs reflecting the diverse cultural tapestry of the archipelago. The sun hung low in the sky, casting elongated shadows that danced across the bustling marketplaces, where vendors shouted their wares in a cacophony of voices. Amidst the thrumming heart of the city, a transformation was brewing. The Filipino people, weary from years of colonial subjugation, were on the cusp of embracing a new narrative, one that was distinctly their own. In the dim light of a local cafe, a gathering of passionate souls congregated around the wooden tables, their eyes alight with fervor and ambition. They were poets, artists, and young revolutionaries, drawn together by a shared vision of a future unshackled from the remnants of foreign rule. "Listen," declared a young man, his voice steady yet fervent, as he stood atop a rickety chair. "We must carve our identity from the stone of our history. We are no longer mere subjects. We are Filipinos." His words ignited a spark in the hearts of those around him, the echoes of their applause resonating through the cafe, mingling with the aroma of strong coffee and fried plantains. As the evening progressed, the discussions turned to the role of culture in this burgeoning sense of nationhood. The air crackled with the energy of possibility, and the group began to imagine a festival, a celebration of their heritage that would galvanize the entire nation. They envisioned a vibrant showcase of traditional dances, music that stirred the soul, and an exhibition of indigenous art. This festival would be more than a mere gathering. It would be a declaration of independence, a testament to the resilience of the Filipino spirit. In the weeks that followed, the city buzzed with preparations. Banners were stitched, instruments were tuned, and the streets were alive with the rhythm of dance rehearsals. The camaraderie among the people blossomed, forging connections between diverse communities, that had long remained fragmented. Yet, with the anticipation came unease. The government, wary of such displays of unity, began to tighten its grip. Rumors of crackdowns on gatherings circulated, sowing seeds of fear among the organizers. On the eve of the festival, the atmosphere was electric, a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The sun dipped below the horizon, and as the stars emerged, the streets of Manila transformed into a kaleidoscope of color and sound. Crowds gathered, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of lanterns, the air thick with the sounds of drums and laughter. It was a night to remember, a night that would carve itself into the annals of history. But as the festivities reached their zenith, shadows loomed on the periphery. Government soldiers, clad in their uniforms, positioned themselves strategically, their presence a stark reminder of the delicate balance between celebration and repression. The tension was palpable. The scent of fried fish mingled with the anxiety that hung in the air. At the climax of the evening, as dancers twirled and singers belted out the melodies of the islands, a sudden hush fell over the crowd. A soldier stepped forward, a figure of authority amidst the joyous chaos. The collective breath of the audience hitched, hearts racing in sync. Would this celebration be silenced? Would they be forced back into the shadows? But in that moment, something remarkable happened. The crowd, emboldened by the spirit of unity, began to chant, a rhythmic call that transcended fear. It surged through the streets, a powerful affirmation of their identity, echoing through the hearts of all who stood witness. The legend of the Filipino spirit was taking shape, woven together by the threads of courage, resilience, and hope. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the bustling streets of Quezon City, a palpable tension hung in the humid air. The flickering street lamps illuminated Balete Drive, a quiet thoroughfare lined with towering acacia trees, their gnarled branches arching overhead like skeletal fingers. It was here, amid the whispering leaves and the distant hum of evening traffic, that the whispers of the White Lady began to weave themselves into the fabric of local lore. In the early years of the 20th century, stories of the ghostly figure began to circulate among the residents. An ethereal woman, draped in a flowing white gown, was said to haunt the lonely stretch of road, appearing suddenly to unsuspecting motorists late at night. Her long black hair, cascading down her back like a waterfall of shadows, would billow in the night breeze, and her haunting visage would strike fear into the hearts of those who crossed her path. It was on a particularly balmy evening in 1950 when the legend took root in the minds of the townsfolk. A group of teenagers, emboldened by tales of the spectral figure, decided to venture out one night, daring one another to drive down Balete Drive in search of the elusive White Lady. As their laughter echoed through the stillness, the atmosphere thickened with an unshakable sense of foreboding. "Do you really think she's out there?" one of the boys, Pedro, asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His bravado wavered under the weight of the stories his grandmother had told him, of a woman scorned, abandoned by love, who wandered the earth seeking vengeance. "We'll see," replied Maria, her eyes sparkling with mischief. She leaned forward, urging her friends to drive faster, their hearts racing, not just from the thrill of adventure, but from an instinctive fear of the unknown. As the car rolled onto Balete Drive, the laughter faded, replaced by an oppressive silence. The headlights sliced through the darkness, illuminating the road ahead, but it was the shadows that held their breath. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the distance, a woman in white, standing motionless at the edge of the road, her expression unreadable. The car screeched to a halt, and the teenagers stared, transfixed. Maria, driven by a mix of curiosity and dread, pushed open the door, her feet hitting the pavement with a muted thud. The others gasped, urging her to return, but she took a step closer, her heart pounding like a war drum. "Excuse me? Are you lost?" she called out, her voice trembling. The figure turned, revealing a face pale as moonlight, eyes hollow and sorrowful. The air thickened, the scent of jasmine swirling around them, a ghostly reminder of beauty intertwined with tragedy. Without a word, the apparition raised her hand, pointing toward the road ahead. In that moment, the weight of centuries seemed to press down upon the young girl, as if the very essence of the White Lady's sorrow wrapped around her like a shroud. The moment stretched, taut with unspoken words and unfulfilled dreams. Suddenly, The figure vanished, leaving only the rustle of leaves and the distant sound of an approaching vehicle. Panic surged through the teenagers, the laughter of earlier transforming into frantic cries as they scrambled back into the car. With a roar of the engine, they sped away, leaving behind the haunted stretch of Balete Drive, forever changed by their encounter. Word of the incident spread like wildfire, igniting imaginations and fears alike. The legend of the White Lady grew, entwining the very essence of Quezon City. With every retelling, the tragic figure transformed from a mere ghost into a symbol of lost love and yearning, captivating the hearts of all who dared to tread the haunted road. The sun dipped low in the humid Philippine sky, casting long shadows across the bustling streets of Manila. In the heart of the city, a palpable tension crackled in the air as journalists and cameras converged on the scene, drawn by the allure of a story that had gripped the nation. It was the mid-1970s, a time marked by political unrest and social upheaval. Yet this particular tale transcended the usual headlines. This was the legend of the Aswang. As the evening descended, the air thickened with the scent of grilled street food and the distant sound of jeepneys honking, weaving through the throngs of onlookers. A crowd had gathered outside an old, dilapidated house, rumored to be the lair of the mythical creature said to prey on the living. Whispers of the Aswang, a shape-shifting monster that could appear as a beautiful woman by day and a ghastly figure by night, spread like wildfire. It was a story that had haunted Filipino folklore for generations, but now it was reignited by a string of mysterious disappearances in the province of Capiz. Cameramen jockeyed for the best angle, their lenses trained on the peeling facade of the house, while reporters scribbled notes feverishly in their notepads, eager to capture every detail. The flickering streetlights cast an eerie glow, illuminating the anxious faces of the gathering crowd. Each person brought their own stories, tales of encounters and folklore passed down through families, each more sensational than the last. "Did you hear what happened to the farmer?" a woman gasped, her voice trembling with fear. "He swore he saw her transform under the full moon, her skin glistening like oil." A ripple of gasps echoed through the crowd, as if the mere mention of the Aswang summoned the creature into their midst. The stories fed the frenzy, drawing more people into the thrall of the unknown. As night fell, the reporters began broadcasting live, their voices a blend of excitement and trepidation. "This is not just folklore, this is a phenomenon," one anchor declared as the camera panned across the anxious faces of locals. The media circus had officially begun, and with it came the cameras, the lights, and the inevitable scrutiny of a nation grappling with its own shadows. However, the coverage was not without consequences. The Aswang legend, while steeped in cultural significance, began to morph under the relentless gaze of the media. The line between truth and entertainment blurred, and soon, the mythos of the Aswang became a sensationalized spectacle. Politicians seized the opportunity, using the fear to divert attention from pressing issues, manipulating the legend for their own gain. As the night wore on, the atmosphere thickened with anticipation, and the crowd's fervor transformed into anxiety. A sudden scream pierced the night, sending a jolt through the onlookers. Eyes widened, and hearts raced as the throng surged forward, desperate for answers. The cameras swung wildly, capturing every moment of fear and fascination. But the truth remained elusive, a reflection of a society caught between the realities of a turbulent era and the haunting specters of its own folklore. In those moments, the Aswang was no longer just a creature of the night. It had become a symbol of the chaos that gripped the Philippines, a mirror reflecting the fears and desires of a nation in flux. The cameras continued to roll, but the weight of history and the stories of the people remained just out of reach, lurking in the shadows, waiting to be told. The sultry dusk settled over Balete Drive, casting elongated shadows that danced eerily among the towering acacia trees. The hum of cicadas filled the air, a relentless symphony that punctuated the encroaching twilight. It was during these hours that whispers of the White Lady began to swell. Carried on the winds of local legend, and fanned by the flickering glow of lanterns outside small homes. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the streets of the small town buzzed with an electrifying tension, a blend of anxiety and curiosity that had taken root in the hearts of its residents. Local newspapers, often the lifeblood of the community, seized upon the story with fervor. Headlines blared in bold print. "Ghostly hitchhiker haunts Balete Drive." The articles recounted chilling encounters, drivers who swerved to avoid a spectral figure, only to find their backseat empty moments later. Accounts poured in from townsfolk and thrill-seekers alike, each tale adding another layer to the mythos of the White Lady, a tragic figure draped in a flowing white dress that seemed to shimmer even in the dimmest light. Radio stations, eager to capitalize on the growing fascination, invited spirited discussions and lively debates. "What do you believe?" the hosts would ask, their voices crackling through static-laden airwaves. "Is she a lost soul seeking revenge, or a guardian watching over Balete Drive?" Listeners leaned in closer, some clutching the knobs of their radios as if they could physically grasp the truth, while others scoffed, dismissing the reports as mere fabrications spun from the imaginations of bored townsfolk. As the story spread, so too did the throngs of thrill-seekers, drawn to Balete Drive like moths to a flame. Cars lined the narrow road, their headlights cutting through the darkness, illuminating the gnarled branches overhead that seemed to reach down as if trying to grasp the souls of those who dared to tread the path. Excited laughter mingled with nervous chatter, while some invoked charms and prayers, half serious in their intentions, hoping to ward off any spirits that might linger. Yet the atmosphere was charged with an undercurrent of unease. One night, a group of young men, emboldened by the tales they had heard, decided to test their courage. Armed with nothing but flashlights and bravado, they ventured deeper into the shadows of Balete Drive, the air thick with the scent of impending rain. As they reached a particularly dark stretch, a sudden chill swept through the trees, silencing the cicadas. The thrill-seekers froze, their laughter fading into a hesitant whisper. Then it happened. A figure emerged, ethereal and haunting, her long hair cascading like a waterfall of shadows. Dressed in flowing white, she stood at the roadside, her expression a mixture of sorrow and longing. The men gasped, their bravado evaporating as terror gripped their hearts. In a panic, they turned, sprinting back to their car, leaving only the echo of their footsteps behind. News of this encounter rippled through the community, further stoking the flames of fascination and fear. With each passing night, the legend of the White Lady grew, transforming Balete Drive into a pilgrimage site for the curious, the skeptical, and the brave. What had begun as a single tale had evolved into a tapestry of stories, intertwining the fates of those who encountered the ghostly hitchhiker, a reminder of the thin veil that separates the living from the lingering shadows of the past. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the bustling streets of Manila in the early evening of 1986. The air buzzed with anticipation, thick with the aroma of street food and the distant sounds of karaoke, but beneath this vibrant facade lay a current of unrest, a growing discontent that simmered just below the surface. As the months rolled into years, the people of the Philippines had begun to awaken. Fueled by whispered tales of injustice and a yearning for change, on the outskirts of Quezon City, a crowd began to gather near the gates of the University of the Philippines. Students, teachers, and citizens from all walks of life converged, their voices rising in a collective swell that echoed through the streets. They held banners aloft, emblazoned with slogans demanding freedom and justice. The air crackled with a mix of hope and fear, for the regime of Ferdinand Marcos had grown increasingly oppressive, silencing dissent with brutal force. Within the throng stood Maria, a young woman with determination etched across her features. She clutched a tattered notebook, filled with her own accounts of the injustices she had witnessed. The stories of her neighbors, farmers who had lost their land to the whims of corrupt officials, and workers whose rights had been trampled underfoot, flowed through her mind like a relentless river. Maria had taken it upon herself to document these tales, believing that each one deserved to be heard, that each voice mattered. As the sun set, the crowd swelled, their chants rising in fervor. "Never again," they cried, a mantra echoing the pain of past tyrannies. The sound reverberated through the streets, a cacophony of righteous indignation that drew more souls to the gathering. Among them was Jose, a former soldier who had seen the dark underbelly of the regime. He carried with him the weight of his past, the memories of friends who had disappeared into the night, never to be seen again. The stories of the missing haunted him, and the courage of the people ignited a fire within him that he thought had long been extinguished. As night draped its cloak over the city, the mood shifted. The distant rumble of military vehicles echoed ominously down the roads. The crowd grew tense, eyes darting toward the sound, hearts pounding in unison. A line of soldiers appeared, their faces stoic, weapons at the ready. The air thickened with anxiety, and for a fleeting moment, a silence fell over the assembled multitude. Then, as if by an unspoken signal, the chants resumed, louder, more defiant, each voice carrying the weight of countless others. A soldier stepped forward, his voice booming over the crowd, a warning laced with threat. Disperse, or face the consequences. But the people stood firm, a wall of solidarity against the looming specter of oppression. Maria's heart raced, not only from fear, but from an overwhelming sense of purpose. This was not merely an event, it was a movement, a collective heartbeat that could not be silenced. In that pivotal moment, under the watchful gaze of the stars, a spark ignited. It was a promise that the fight for justice would not fade into the shadows. As the crowd held its ground, the stories of the oppressed began to intertwine, weaving a tapestry of resilience that would resonate through the annals of history. The embers of revolution had been kindled, and in the heart of the Philippines, the struggle for a new dawn had begun. The sun dipped low over the winding roads of the Philippine countryside, casting elongated shadows that danced across the asphalt. As dusk settled, the world transformed, and the air thickened with the scent of damp earth and impending rain. It was during this time, between the fading light and the encroaching darkness, that the legend of the White Lady began to weave itself into the fabric of local lore. On a particularly humid evening in 1952, a group of young men, returning from a late-night gathering, cruised along the twisting mountain roads of Rizal. Laughter mingled with the throaty roar of their aging jeepney, but the carefree atmosphere was shattered when the headlights illuminated a figure standing motionless at the roadside. A woman, draped in a flowing white gown, her hair cascading like a silken waterfall, appeared to float just beyond the reach of the vehicle's light. "Did you see that, Thomas?" the driver blurted, his voice suddenly tense. The laughter halted, replaced by a nervous silence that enveloped the group. They exchanged glances, half expecting the apparition to vanish into thin air. But she remained, her pale visage etched in the fading light, eyes wide yet unseeing, as if trapped in a world beyond their own. The jeepney sped past, hearts pounding in unison as the men could not shake the chilling sensation that they had been watched. They soon realized they were not alone in their encounter. Over the following months, an influx of similar stories began to echo throughout the towns nestled in the mountains. Drivers recounted their own brush with the White Lady, her presence a harbinger of misfortune. Near misses became the talk of the town, with whispered conversations that mingled fears with intrigue. Authorities, aware of the growing unease among the populace, convened to address the rising concerns. In a small, dimly lit room, filled with the smell of cigarette smoke and coffee, local officials gathered to discuss the phenomenon. Captain Ramos, a stern man with a weathered face, displayed a map dotted with reports. "This is no coincidence," he asserted, tapping a finger against the paper. "We must investigate the origins of these sightings before someone gets hurt." The following week saw patrols increase along the treacherous roads, as officers aimed to uncover the truth behind the spectral figure. Yet despite their efforts, the White Lady eluded them. Each night, vehicles would slow near the site of her last appearance, drivers casting nervous glances into the shadows, half expecting to find her waiting. Late one evening, as a storm brewed over the mountains, a family in a battered sedan had their own encounter. The father, Jose, struggled to maintain control as rain lashed against the windshield, the wipers desperately fighting the torrent. Suddenly, a flash of white caught his eye. "Look," he shouted, pointing toward the side of the road. His wife gasped, clutching their child tightly as the figure emerged, her expression mournful and pleading. Jose swerved instinctively, narrowly avoiding a collision with a tree, the vehicle skidding to a halt. Heart racing, he turned to his family, but the white lady had vanished, leaving only the echo of her presence looming over them. As the decade wore on, the whispers grew louder, the stories more intricate. The legend of the White Lady became a warning, a spectral guardian of the lost, a reminder of the ethereal world that lingered just beyond human comprehension. The roads, once a path of progress, now bore the weight of caution, and the specter of the White Lady remained a solemn figure, a ghost woven into the very fabric of the Philippine night.